Welcome back to the series showcasing how an artist's work can inspire short stories. Today with us, we have Joanne Freeman, who wrote the story Family Portrait, which was inspired by Mary Gingrich's painting, Girl with a Violin. Joanne, you were Mary's neighbor. And so you know the girl in that painting.
It was Mary's daughter, looking a little darker and sadder than I probably ever saw her in real life, although she could be quite pensive. It did definitely inspire this story. The story came together rather quickly. In 2 days, I had it written.
How did that painting inspire you to write about an Italian mother, which seems like it's totally different from the painting?
Oh, it certainly is. But the portrait was a character in the story, although the character was already dead. For some reason, I dragged in memories of my Italian grandmother, my Italian mother. Some of the people in the neighborhood where I grew up were also Italian, friends of my mother, especially the one I call Mrs. Bernardo. She was like a second mother to me. So I guess we write what we know about, really. I've often thought my family is so dysfunctional and strange that somebody should write about them. So why not me?
I know you presented a very interesting Italian family dynamics, yet many
Right.
of us, I think, can relate to some of those characters because we all know people who favors one child who has to cope with disappointments and jealousy and all that stuff. And it's so just basic human reactions, actually.
Right, and especially in the Italian culture, not now, but as it was quite a few years ago, the eldest child or the unmarried child was expected to stay with the mother if she were a widow and take care of her, drive her everywhere, treat her like a queen, sort of like an Italian Cinderella. My mother, fortunately, was not like that, but my grandmother most certainly was.
Mary, what was your reaction reading Joanne's story for the first time?
To see that the portrait was actually part of the story in such an unusual way. You have to read the story because it's not what you think it would be. And so it was just full of surprises. I'm from a family with 3 girls, and so there's always that kind of dynamic. And I just thought she nailed it.
Now, Mary, you painted your daughter more than once. Is that right?
Yes, much to her surprise, or I'm not sure if she enjoyed it. As she said the other day, I never gave you permission. I did start painting her soon after she was born, and I have a portrait for almost every 2 years of her life. Then she moved to Germany, and so I couldn't get at her.
I just wondered if Dawn thought you had revealed something in her.
She said I caught the look well. I was on a mission to show young children and women as something very important. And so they're always looking out of the canvas at you with a glance that I'd hoped would be arresting and look a little bit important. I felt like women and children in the museums were always portrayed a little bit flowery and not with any sign of intellectual importance. So I felt every time I paint a woman or child, I try to make them look right at you, or they're always doing something. Of course, in the times I've been painting, the importance of women has changed radically.
When I was doing the short story anthologies, I couldn't get people to write about anything that's not a portrait. So I divided into different categories so that there's the portrait category and there is the landscape and still life category. And I even have an abstract category so that people would look at other art and come up with stories.
Portraits already have a built-in narrative, right?
Mhm.
In a way, you can kind of imagine a narrative. There's a relationship between these 3 peaches. And there's a very heavy-duty story that I have in my mind as I paint a still life. I learned that from a teacher, that when you set up a still life, make sure the objects have relationships to one another.
I was wondering, Joanne, looking at that painting, what kind of story would you come up with?
What came to mind, it's a relationship between a couple while they're preparing food, making a dessert. All of a sudden, all kinds of other things come out while they're talking. They're speaking about food, and yet they're not. They're talking about some underlying problems they have.
Mary, I wonder if I can show you an old man painting and see
Oh,
if you
sure.
can tell us something about that.
This is Clifton on the northwest side of Ireland. And just like every other place, there's a grocery store. There's a little story with this. I actually painted this twice because I put it on the roof of my car when I finished the first time and I drove off without it. So I painted it again. The first one, the woman was looking at the man. And on this one, I have her not paying any attention. I have a series of paintings that are truly genre paintings. They're often not very big, but they have a narrative, talks about relationships and maybe the things we deal with as we age or as we just travel through life. I hope they're thought-provoking.
It's kind of reminiscent of Edward Hopper, the whole feeling of it.
When you have a painting like that that involves some architecture, all the lines are meaningful as far as framing each character. So you have this interior sense like Hopper did. So Hopper also likes deep shadows and really was able to point out his narrative by encasing and dividing his picture plane in special ways to lead your eye through the picture plane so you could understand his story. And I think that's fascinating to do, just how am I going to tell a story and then add the compositional secrets to get you to see what I'm trying to tell you. Well, my favorite thing was the placard of the sandwiches.
Yeah.
Because I think afterwards I went in and got one. That's what artists do. We have to eat. We stand there forever and I think, look, I'm painting food. I should just go get some.
So thank you, Mary and Joanne, for joining us. You can go to crowwoodspublishing.com or Amazon to buy Visions of Life and the Chicago art scene, which is where Mary's paintings show up. So see you next time.
Thank you, Ivy.
Thank you.